Hi, I'm Steve Barlow. This is the Humanised Workforce Future You podcast video, where we're talking about perceptions of the future, issues that we need to be aware of, and their role in a rapidly changing work and life environment.
Hi, I'm Craig Saffin. The Humanised Workforce Future You podcast series is focused on the key factors evolving to create a more humanised workforce and how people from all walks of life are creating their future selves.
Welcome to the Humanised Workforce Future You podcast. I'm Steve Barlow, and as always, I'm joined by Craig Saffin. How are you today, Craig?
Very well, thanks, Steve. Yeah, very well. It's looking forward to the weekend, actually. So, yeah.
Great. Okay. So we've also got a guest today, Lee Foster, who's joining us from Brisbane. So welcome, Lee. Good to have you here.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us and our listeners a little bit about your background, who you are, and the kind of work that you're involved in?
Yeah, my background is in engineering, in water engineering. I've been doing that for nearly 30 years now. I studied engineering because I wanted to help fix the planet. The the environment was starting to people were starting to become aware that the environment was in a bad shape, and I wanted to help fix the planet. So I went off and did engineering, and I focused on water because I thought water is something that's not going to hurt the planet, and everyone needs it. Water is at the time I thought water is the next oil, which is starting to come to fruition now. And but about 10 years ago, I became curious about innovation. And I went back to university to do my third degree, and ended up studying innovation and wanted to understand how innovation works and how innovation doesn't work. And from that research, I came up with a framework that describes how innovation and knowledge can work together. So now I'm working with Yuri, Timmermans, to help organizations use that framework that I've developed to help them through that innovation process and be more successful at it, because innovation is really hard, and and a lot of people just don't really know how to innovate. And what I found was that a lot of people don't understand knowledge or manage knowledge very well. In fact, less than 20% of organizations manage knowledge well. So I realized that was an opportunity to improve innovation by managing knowledge. So that's what the framework's all about, managing knowledge through that innovation process.
How interesting. I remember when I graduated university, my first degree many years ago in ag science up at Armidale, and I remember the final talk from our professor was that, over the course of our lifetime, we'd have many careers, but also he said that water would also become much more valuable than oil. He said that at the time, and
right.
It's what you just said as well. So I find that very, very fascinating. Hi, Yuri. Welcome. Lee, I'd like to ask you about the current water situation. Since you have an interest in this, it's fascinating from a human perspective, and certainly we rely on it. But it's amazing. I think a lot of us take it for granted, water, and many countries and many communities don't have it so available in the world. So what is the view around the water, since your altruistic approach, you're trying to save the planet and so on? But what is your view about the water supply in the world and what's happening?
It's really scary. A lot of war is happening now because water is not available. Water is scarce. And even in Australia, there's so many towns, cities, well, maybe not cities, but large towns that just don't have good quality water available to them. And what tends to happen is people can't drink the water that comes out of their taps because it doesn't taste very well, or doesn't taste well enough.
Yeah.
And so they go to the supermarket and they have a look at the shelves, and water's expensive and to buy in bottle, and then they look at things like Coca-Cola, and it's probably cheaper than water. So what do? They drink the soft drink instead of water, and a lot of towns suffer from that with high diabetes rates from drinking soft drink rather than water, because it's not available to them, even in Australia. And I just find that really shocking. Water is life, and you can't have a good community, a sustainable community without water, and it's quite scary when you're starting to run out. I was actually involved in Queensland. There's a thing called the Western Corridor Purified Recycled Water System, which you may have heard of, I don't know, but I was involved in that project for 2 years, and at the time Brisbane was running out of water, and it was really scary, and it got down to very low levels in our water supply, and it was a really interesting project to be involved with, but it was just a really scary time for everyone, government, engineers, scientists. We were all quite scared.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's only 3 years ago at a lot of towns in New South Wales were carting water in to the town, and we were worried about we weren't allowed to use water for anything other than drinking in Sydney. So, but now we've got too much of it, and they're worried about flooding and stuff, and towns washing away. So yeah, things turn pretty quickly at the moment in the modern global environment thing, isn't it?
Well, exactly, and it's only going to get worse. Those cycles are just going to become more frequent and more severe, which is why we need to innovate so we can have a better tomorrow.
Okay, that's a great segue. Let's move into maybe a little bit more positive stuff, because it's a little bit gloomy at the moment. So you're talking about you talk about knowledge frameworks and also education. And you also, one of your other keywords, of course, is innovation. Can you talk about how the education and the knowledge and the innovation fit together?
Yes. So, someone asked me once which one comes first, innovation or knowledge?
Yeah.
And my answer was, to innovate, you need knowledge, but to create new knowledge, you need to innovate. And I guess creating new knowledge, you then need to be able to transfer that knowledge to others to educate them. And part of the knowledge management process is really understanding those knowledge artifacts that you're creating, and finding the full benefits out of that new knowledge, and transferring it to your customers or to your team, your organization, and growing through that realization of the new knowledge.
Right. Do you think that companies, in my experience, companies are very checkered in how they store and make knowledge or information available internally? Is this something that you touch on?
Yes, like I said before, less than 20% of organizations consciously manage knowledge more than just at an ad hoc level. So there's a huge opportunity to improve the way we manage knowledge. And I guess it's more than just information, isn't it? So it's about managing that information in a way that can be utilized and taken full advantage of to improve the way we do things, which creates that's the knowledge aspect, when you really grabbing that information and doing something with it.
In the information era, like it's an information era, isn't it? So the fact that people don't know how to manage this sort of thing is quite astounding in a way, isn't it? Because there's a lot of software solutions available for it, aren't there?
Yeah, there is, and there are tools out there. There's organizations out there that will help you look at how you manage knowledge and compare the way you manage it to like organizations. And it is a non-for-profit organization in America that does this, and they have over 10 years of data about how people manage knowledge and the processes that are involved in managing knowledge, so they can tell you straight away, where are your gaps in how you manage knowledge and how to improve it. But not many organizations are a member of this organization. I think
what's it called?
It's APQMC, something like that. American Process Quality Management Center, something like that.
All right.
Sorry, off the top of my head.
That's all right. I'll put you on the spot there. I'm sorry.
It's a great organization and lots of information. And I had, because I'm in water, I had a look at who were members of that organization, and the only one in Australia is actually Melbourne Water.
Okay.
And they're one of my clients is Melbourne Water, and the people that I work with, they didn't even know they were members. And it's not cheap to be a member of this organization, and there's just so much valuable information they have there, and they're not taking advantage of it, even though they're members. And
that's like a global shared database of relevant information, is it?
Yeah, and lots of training material and lots of how-tos, and lots of masterclasses are available to members on how to manage knowledge, but all sorts of things, not just knowledge. So they do other things around process, understanding management process and quality control and all sorts of stuff. But one of the key focus is knowledge management.
Okay. You just changing a bit, you said that innovation is hard. Why is innovation hard?
Innovation is hard because there's a lot of uncertainty in it, and which creates risk, and people are scared about risk. And it's also hard because we often use metrics that are normally designed for standard projects that don't have a lot of uncertainty in them. So if you're using standard project management tools, which 80%, I think it's 80% of organizations just use standard project management approaches to run their innovation projects. And when you're doing that and you're using time, budget, scope to manage your innovation like you would a normal project, you're going to run into problems because there's so much uncertainty in those aspects. You don't know how long it's going to take. You don't really know what the scope is. You don't know how much it's going to cost. So how can you manage your innovation project using those metrics? And I guess that's one of the things I came up with from the research was a better way of managing innovation through understanding behaviors that can get in the way of innovation, which is what emerged from the research was trust and energy or motivation. And those two are linked, and we can measure them. And it's not easy to measure them, but we've worked out a way to measure them, and using qualitative methods to measure them and come up with the score of your trust and energy for that initiative at a particular time.
How interesting. It's sort of like a change as well, like change management is difficult as well, isn't it? And for similar sort of thing. So what sort of leaders are required? What sort of leadership traits are required for to steer an innovation initiative?
Yes, innovation is all about change, right? Which is hard. People don't like change. It's another reason why it's hard. So the leaders need to really understand why they're doing it. The why is so important, as Simon Sinek says. You need to really be understanding why, because innovation needs a driver to push through that change. So, and the leaders need to be showing their energy to the organization. They need to be really behind this change. If they're not on board, if your leaders are not on board for the change, then it's just not going to happen. So you need that that energy to share with others and try and motivate others to realize why they need to do that change and what the benefit is for them, for the organization, for the community. Otherwise, they're not going to move. They're just going to go back to BAU.
Right. So it sounds a lot like approach to selling strategy internally as well. Like you have to actually bring everyone with you, don't you? Is that what you're describing?
Yes, absolutely. And part of the framework is there's 4 stages to the framework. And the first stage is form, then create, then adopt, and finally critique. So in the form phase, we try and encourage people to think about those customers that are going to be using the initiative right at the beginning. So you're getting them on board right at the beginning. You're trying to understand their needs. And so then when you get to the create phase, you're actually creating with them in mind.
Okay.
Because so many initiatives will get, through the form phase, through the create phase, but then they throw it over the fence to, operations to use this great new widget, and they're going, what?
Yeah, right.
What's this for? Why are we doing this? We don't want it.
So there's no ownership to who they're giving it to. They don't understand or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about the adopt? So that's the adopt piece, is it?
Yeah, that's right.
That's the third part of the frame. What was the fourth part?
Critique.
So is that like before you start the process again, sort of thing?
Yeah, that's right. And it is a process, exactly that. So the critique part is really important, and so many people don't do it. And that's why I've made sure it's in there. And that's where you are unpacking all those lessons learned, but also understanding what's the new knowledge that we've actually created here, and where else can we make benefit of it. So doing a really good benefits realization process is something that organizations don't really know how to do. And or they do lessons learned, but then they just throw everything into a spreadsheet and go, look, there's our lessons learned. And no one does anything with it.
Let's move on, sort of thing. Yeah. When you're doing the innovation, one of the things that's interested me in the past is innovation within an organization, how you adopt it into the business, or how it's done in the business, whether it's done through acquisition or whether it's done through putting off a separate division, or whether it's done within an existing division. What is your opinion about this sort of thing? The best way to harbour or to foster innovation?
Yuri, do you want to answer that one?
Hi, Yuri.
Yeah, I was just taking some notes, so I was just. Can you repeat the question?
So the question is about how do you embed the innovation culture and get the innovation successful within an organization? Is it embedded in an existing business unit, or is it a new business unit is created, or is it best to do it through a startup and then have the startup acquired by an organization?
Yeah, it really depends on the culture of the businesses and what you're aiming to do as well. So all those options are valid, but it's also managing your risk as well.
Okay.
So you see a lot of organizations that if they're doing something quite risky, but they've got a big brand, they'll actually create a spin-off brand, and actually have control over that spin-off brand, or motivate the people, or provide funding for the startup, and then an option to buy back later and incorporate it in some shape or form.
Okay.
And if you're looking at corporate innovation, do you do it in how big do you do it? It really looks at starting small, but it really needs that leadership support. Get something working.
Okay.
And then continue to scale it to a level, and then go to that next level of maturity as well.
As you're gathering that new knowledge that Lee referenced. Okay. Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, the really important part, what I've seen in the innovation is there's plenty of ideas. It's how do you actually keep things going? when people change, or there's something that happens in the work environment or the business environment.
Okay.
How do you keep things going? And the framework really helps to manage that and make it visible and transparent. And then it's up to the organization to actually do something about those things to move it again. But even if it's paused, and we're seeing that in some organizations at the moment where there's a change in leadership, you're able to pause it and go, this is what we know right now. This is what we've been learning. These are the people involved, and you can pick it up at a later point.
Okay.
And the focus on knowledge objects is really important for that adoption and the sustainability.
Okay. Thank you very much. Steve, you want to sum up?
Yeah, I'll just bring together some ideas here. I guess picking up where you were talking just then, Yuri, about how to keep things going. And really a theme of what you've been talking about is the concept of flow, whether it be with water, that you want to keep that flowing into the right channels, or whether it be information and knowledge that you want to keep flowing into the right channels. And in both cases, it's easy not to have the flow happening or not to have the flow happening well enough. And you mentioned that many organizations don't handle knowledge flow very well. Mm-hmm. And they don't really have a systematic way of doing it. But also the thing is that it's in both cases of water and knowledge, it's life-giving. And if you don't have it, you create problems. And social problems in terms, and health problems in terms of H2O, but also organizational problems in terms of knowledge. You talked a lot about innovation, and innovation is about movement. It's about new channels. It's creating new pathways, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. And you sort of address the issue of why that's difficult for people to do. And you mentioned things like there's uncertainty and there's risk, and people are anxious about uncertainty and risks. You also talked about a non-alignment oftentimes with the tools that are used and the approaches, that the standard project management approaches don't necessarily, and they're not necessarily up for the task. That you talked about the fact that really innovation is a different way of thinking. It's not the standard kind of way of thinking. You've got to approach it in a different way. You need to use different tools and different frameworks of thinking. And part of the framework of thinking are the human factors. And you mentioned two in particular, trust and energy or motivation, you said, as being critical in having the right mental framework to make this happen, and that it is ultimately about change. And you talked about leadership and the need for leaders to really drive this thing, that innovation is not going to happen all on its own. It needs to be nurtured, it needs to be driven, and leaders need to support it, and they need the energy, and they need to be sure of what the benefits are, and they need to know how to communicate that to other people so that they create buy-in. And you've talked about a framework, an approach that you've developed and your team have developed to help organizations and help leaders to achieve the kind of ends that they're searching for. So this whole idea of flow, of giving life, of creating movement, of making stuff happen and keeping it going has been the message that I've got out of it. So thank you.
Thanks very much. When's the software going live, Lee?
It's available now.
Available now. Fantastic. All right. Okay. Thanks very much for your time and your sharing your knowledge there, Lee. And thanks very much, Yuri, for the added value. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's great to chat.
Please leave a rating or review for the series on the medium where you source your videos.
The transcripts for today's video can be found on craigsafin.com. Please subscribe to the series to avoid missing out on future episodes.